Hello and welcome to Geek Speak with Envision IT, a podcast for business leaders and technology experts that like to stay on top of the latest security news and listen to interviews with insightful industry leaders. I'm Bill Crane, Chief Stakeholder Architect and CTO at Envision IT. Let's get started. Hello, we are excited and welcome to introduce Brian Kobleur. He's a Senior Director and he's with Citrix and works on the worldwide Microsoft business development. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Bill. How are you?
Good. Maybe we can start out, Brian. You can tell us a little bit about yourself and what your role is at Citrix.
Yeah, happy to. So I am responsible for sales strategy with Microsoft at Citrix globally. So that includes our direct sales teams that work with Microsoft. It includes supporting our channel partners in their efforts to triangulate with Microsoft. Essentially, anything that intersects on Citrix and Microsoft technology usually comes across to me. So the messaging and content and things we do jointly with Microsoft. I work with a team of people who help build that content, and I'm fortunate enough to have a very experienced and seasoned team of almost entirely ex-Microsoft employees like myself, whose job it is to help customers get the most value out of what we're building jointly with Microsoft. So something about me is I've been at Citrix for 10 years now, and I've been responsible for our business with Microsoft that entire time. Increasing levels of responsibility, and I stepped into the global strategy role about 3 years ago. Prior to Citrix, I spent 15 years at Microsoft in a variety of customer-facing roles, sales quota carrying roles the entire time in both the U.S. And in Germany.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know if it's by chance or very purposeful, but like you said, a lot of people helping you in this role are, have experience from Microsoft as well. I imagine that's pretty valuable.
Yeah, it's a great point, right? So people don't often realize this, but quite a few people at Citrix are former Microsoft employees, and quite a few people at Microsoft are former Citrix employees. So, when we talk about the strength of the relationship, it's more than just, marketing slides or products that we build to run on top of Microsoft's foundational products. There's a regular influx of people from both companies that really permeates everything we do. We see the world in similar ways as Microsoft, and Microsoft sees the world in similar ways as Citrix as a result.
Yeah, it's been great. And here at Envision, I mean, we've known and worked with you for quite a while on your team, and it's definitely been very valuable for us as well.
Well, thank you. We see it the same way, and very much appreciate all the hard work you do.
Oh, you bet. I guess what we're talking about your history with Microsoft and Citrix. I guess how far back does the history go with Citrix and Microsoft?
Quite a long ways. We're actually in the 30th year of our special relationship with Microsoft.
Wow.
So, Citrix has, we do a lot of things, but we got our start, and for a long time, our bread and butter was in the, remote capabilities. It's been known as many names, of course, over the years: WinFrame, MetaFrame, XenApp, and now, of course, the Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Services as part of our cloud subscription offerings. But what many people don't know is just how far back that relationship goes. Many of the customers, of course, are familiar with, RDS, which used to be known as, it's Remote Desktop Services. Then it was Remote Desktop Server before that. Prior to that, it was terminal services and terminal server before that. And way back in the late 1980s, when what was known as Project Hydra at Microsoft at the time and became terminal server, was actually Citrix intellectual property that we licensed to Microsoft. We licensed, our solution at the time, less what used to be known as the ICA protocol, the ICA protocol. And that actually became Remote Desktop Services. So it's really no secret that, or no surprise rather, that that our products work beautifully on top of the Microsoft Foundation because it used to be our code.
Right.
And so, part of our special relationship is that we work very closely with Microsoft on quite a lot of different initiatives, which, I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, it's clear that you can't just be an add-on. Or, I imagine some companies do try to do that, but their performance and their user experience just can't be as good, when you do have that relationship.
I think it's key, right? And I think it's been the key to the success of the joint relationship over the last 30 years as it's expanded into more and more areas, some of which your listeners are probably unaware of, and we'll fix that in just a few moments. But you can't help but have a great user experience when our developers work side by side with Microsoft developers in their major development centers, and have since Windows NT4 days. We know a few things about application and desktop virtualization, and Microsoft benefits from the relationship at an engineering level by taking advantage of our expertise. We have an advantage in that, by working so closely with Microsoft on every version of server and client since NT4 days, we kind of get we get an early view into what's going to make it into that next shipping product from Microsoft. Now, customers, of course, have business needs that sometimes go beyond what Microsoft is going to offer in a given product release. And that's where the real magic of Citrix on top of Microsoft, shines through, because we see what customers are asking for. We know what Microsoft's going to be releasing. So, in terms of skating to where the puck is going to be, we ensure that our product releases leapfrog with Microsoft so that as they introduce new capabilities into the base platform, there is a release schedule from Citrix such that we add additional capabilities to what Microsoft provides. The two together usually give customers most of what they're after. And that's really the heart of our relationship. It's not competitive. Although sometimes, for one reason or another, either through misunderstanding or generally lack of time, people are busy, they sometimes perceive it as competitive. There's always going to be some overlap in functionality. But the message from Citrix and Microsoft together is when, we're the first to tell customers, if your business needs are met by something that Microsoft offers, great, then you don't need us for that particular solution. We've got lots of other areas where we can work together. If you look at what Microsoft provides as release N, we're generally offering capabilities that are N+1 or N+2. Now, the secret to the longevity of Citrix is we understand what some companies don't. We are fully aware that in each new version from Microsoft, they're going to look at what we offer and what other ISVs in the market offer and say, what do we want to include in the base functionality of the next release? We know they're going to do that. They've done it for the last 30 years. Why should they change?
Right.
It helps customers benefit from that, and it keeps us on our toes because we have to continually demonstrate value add. Why does a customer need Citrix if they already have Microsoft is probably the most common question I get every single day.
I've heard that once or twice.
Once or twice, exactly.
And it's always a good story to tell too. I mean, there's so many good examples. Sometimes we hear, Citrix with their workspace strategy, and then there's Microsoft Teams. How do they compete? So you get to tell that story, and it's always fun to talk about. Well, it's interesting because Citrix really helps Microsoft with their own products. So Microsoft Teams, how they deliver that to end users. Citrix, plays a big part in that.
Yeah, that's a good point that you bring up. It's actually something that I spend quite a lot of time on. In 2020, that's really ramped up. In 2019, the conversation was all about, well, why do I need Citrix if I have Windows Virtual Desktop? And those conversations are continuing and ongoing as more and more customers, realize that they have a WVD entitlement, a Windows Virtual Desktop entitlement. And, we constantly get asked the question, well, I've got this, so why do I need you? And
right.
Together, we've built out some really good value add statements around, the best way to manage your Windows Virtual Desktop entitlement is through a Citrix Cloud subscription. And there are a number of proof points and great case studies around that at Citrix we make available out on our Microsoft landing page, which citrix.com/Microsoft is a great first stop for anyone interested in understanding what we're doing with Microsoft.
Yeah.
The conversation in 2020 is much more about Teams and Workspace and addressing confusion in the minds of the customers. And it's the age-old question, right? If I've got this and 180 million customers have Teams, it's a fantastic product. But why I need Citrix or why I need Workspace? And, the simplest way to answer that, of course, is Teams it's right there in the name. It's all about collaboration between groups of people, either within a company or across multiple companies. And Workspace is something totally different. Workspace is about organizing and optimizing the work for individual employees in a context aware way so that you start your day in either Workspace or Teams, and we've built the engineering in place that we can integrate Workspace with Teams so that you really get the power of both products together. You get to interact with your work colleagues in Teams and share files and have conversations in voice and video as the successor product to Skype for Business. But that can be exposed in a very rich way within the Workspace app so that you're not having to switch back and forth between applications all day long, which really derails people's mental thought processes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're also here very excited about the Workspace and Teams, those integrations. You mentioned WVD. There's tremendous amount of interest from customers, and we have found, in the last few months, it's a pretty good story to tell. With the excitement of WVD, for example, and you mentioned like in 2019, you had a lot of these conversations. We have had customers look and say, how are we going to consume this and actually manage it?
Right.
And once you show them the power of integrating that in with Citrix, it's pretty clear to them.
So here you bring up a really great point, Bill, which is, we know how Microsoft works, because as I said, many of us are former Microsoft. So there is no question that Windows Virtual Desktop is a great offering from Microsoft. It's a great entitlement to the M365 licenses that many customers have purchased. It's a really nice piece of functionality and value. There's also no question that it's a 1.0 product. And it's going to take some time for people who are really familiar with how to deliver multi-session capabilities, for example, out of server, to learn what that really means in terms of changing their business models by delivering that out of the Windows 10 Enterprise client. And there are some gaps in functionality in what Windows Virtual Desktop can do today. But for what it was designed for, it's a really great 1.0 product. So why should I go with Citrix when, in a couple of years, Windows Virtual Desktop is going to have everything you guys offer? And my response to that is always the same. You have immediate business problems today that Windows Virtual Desktop, as good as it is, does not address. So what is the time value of money to you? You're already a Citrix shop, or you're considering, a purchase from Citrix. We can integrate those two environments together to where you're going to get the best of both worlds and solve your business problems today. The other way I'd answer that is Citrix, we're not just building software in response to what Microsoft makes available. We have some great feedback from our customer councils, our partner advisory councils on, where all of you would like to see us go. And so we're building new functionality in as well. goes back to what I said earlier. We're not sitting still. We're continuing to innovate upon the great platform that Microsoft has provided us with Windows Virtual Desktop, and we're building all of our product offerings to leverage it and take advantage of it.
Yeah, and we're so excited. The way Citrix is kind of giving customers access to that is via the workspace. I mean, that's it seems obvious now, but I think it's really smart.
It's funny you say that, because when the idea of workspace, first started being talked about within Citrix, I was trying to wrap my mind around this, going, I don't see the tie-in. But when you see it in action, right, you've got one place that you can go, and in that place, the end users, myself included, right, because I'm an end user of our own internal technology as well, I don't have to think about, okay, well, I need access to this resource, so I go to this web page for that, or I bring up this client to access some other resource, and I want to get to my data, so that's, yet a third way. I just go to the Workspace app, and everything there is exposed to me, appropriate for my role and responsibilities within the company, and I'm not distracted. I can see all of my virtual apps. I can see all of my mobile apps, my SaaS apps, my on-prem applications and desktops, no matter where they are. I don't have to think about, which resource location, which public cloud, something in particular I need is running in. It's all right there for me within the Workspace app. It's very powerful to have one-stop shopping to go to get access to everything you need to do your job.
Yeah, for sure. And the other part is it doesn't matter where you are either, right? You're sitting down inside the company, or you're traveling, or.
So that is an excellent point. So in my role for worldwide sales with Microsoft, I spend, my joke is I pay a mortgage in Chicago, and sometimes I even get to sleep here. Right. You'll usually find me at a Microsoft office or a customer or partner location somewhere, or in an airport en route, or returning from that.
Yeah, exactly. So we talked a little bit about Teams and WVD. Are there other good examples that you can think of? Kind of showcasing Microsoft.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing in particular I'd like to talk about is Citrix SD-WAN. I am more excited about this product than I have been in a long time about a lot of products. And the reason is it's incredibly powerful. What many companies offer, some flavor of SD-WAN, right? Which is all about a software-defined wide area network. What is unique about the solutions from Citrix and leveraging our partnership from Microsoft, we're part of the Office 365 Works with Office 365 Ready program, which is a networking certification program that Microsoft offers. We take the Office 365 connectivity principles to heart, and we've baked it into our SD-WAN offering. Where that's important is, the old way of designing networks, everything went back to a corporate data center, right? And so the problem is Office 365 is not, a monolithic service. It's composed of hundreds of distributed services globally, and Microsoft has built these points of presence. They call them front doors. There are about 150 or so Office 365 front doors spread around the world. Well, if you're in London and your traffic all goes back to a corporate data center in Atlanta, it's going to pop out to the Office 365 front door in Atlanta rather than, the one right down the street from you in London.
Right.
So latency is the name of the game in Office 365, and Teams or, Zoom or GoToMeeting or, Hangouts for that matter, any type of voice or video conferencing solution is very susceptible to latency. And anything you can do to reduce that, Microsoft recommends getting that latency down to 30 milliseconds or less, is going to, avoid what we've all been in conference calls where, the voice or video is choppy or garbled. There's nothing wrong with the video technology that you're using. It's the latency in the network that's exposing those kinds of glitches. Citrix SD-WAN is smart enough to break out the Office 365 traffic and route that to the closest Office 365 front door for the user. It still sends everything else back to the corporate data center in terms of security and compliance and packet inspection and everything else that companies want to do with their internally bound traffic. But why send something back and add a couple of extra hops? As a result, we see generally 10 millisecond response times in latency. We can get that latency down on average to about 10 milliseconds, which just means that in a virtual environment, Microsoft has specifically called out Citrix on their Teams for VDI webpage. And Microsoft, they generally don't play favorites. They like to give equal billing to lots of people.
Right.
But I think it is significant and material that Citrix alone is specifically called out on the Teams for Virtual Environments page as having a great solution that's certified by Microsoft.
Yeah, I think that's a great story. And it's a lot of effort to make that work. The SD-WAN solution really, really needs to understand. And one of the things that Office 365, it's very dynamic, right? I mean, Microsoft is adding and changing things all the time. So that's the SD-WAN appliance really needs to be well aware of all that, which it is. So,
yeah, the nature of our relationship is such that we have product groups from just about everything Microsoft makes. We have some sort of a solution that sits on top of that, it's funny you said that earlier because that's one of my favorite quotes. It takes a lot of effort to make something look effortless.
Right.
And the effort in this case is, weekly and in some cases daily meetings between our product groups, our engineering teams, our marketing teams, and of course our sales leadership meets regularly with each other to understand how best to bring value to customers. And minimize, frustrations and misunderstandings that come up when, either employees from either Citrix or Microsoft or confusion in the channel or the customer line. That doesn't do anyone any good. It just results in, a longer time to value.
Right. We're pretty excited about SD-WAN as well. The Office 365 integrations. And then really as customers start to consume more of these, cloud-based, Citrix Managed Desktop or WVD, I mean, it's really a nice part of the whole picture, as far as, ensuring connectivity as well.
Absolutely. The way the partnership has changed is, we were a one-trick pony 30 years ago. We had one product. And so people at Microsoft and customers thought of us a certain way. Microsoft has 4 pillars within the company that they talk about in terms of bringing value to customers. They have the apps and infrastructure piece, which is where Citrix is traditionally fit, right? RDS and things built on top of Windows Server. They have an AI and data pillar, right? So things, Azure machine learning. Citrix, by the way, is the world's largest consumer of Azure machine learning.
Yeah, I don't think, I often mention that just purely Azure infrastructure that Citrix consumes is pretty massive.
We run our entire business internally on Microsoft Azure. And I don't think that many customers understand that the reason our solutions work so well, particularly in Azure, right, is we run our own business on it. So we've got a lot of experience making our own solutions work in Azure. Now, of course, we work in other public clouds as well.
Sure.
But Azure is Citrix's strategic and preferred public cloud. When we bring new functionality to the cloud, and like Microsoft, we add new functionality all the time. Where we expose that functionality first is in Microsoft Azure. And then after some period of time, some of that functionality appears in, great work that customers are doing in AWS or GCP, but it's going to appear first and foremost in Azure.
Right.
The other two pillars are Microsoft's modern workplace pillar. And people don't often think of Citrix in that context, but while not every Citrix customer buys Citrix to deliver Office, that's not the sole reason why they buy Citrix. About 99% of our customers do end up delivering Office or Office 365 through their virtual environment. Now, Citrix, of course, is more than just virtualization. That's a small portion of what we now offer. We've expanded and grown organically to touch on, non-virtualization work cases as well. But when you think modern workplace, Citrix has value to add there in every capacity, including the Teams integration that we spoke about earlier.
Right.
Finally, that last pillar is business dynamics. So, Microsoft's Dynamics solution is something that Citrix historically, it just wasn't in our wheelhouse. We didn't have much there to add in terms of value. One thing that we're doing now that we're really excited about, and you're going to hear a lot more from Citrix over the coming year, is this concept of micro apps inside of the Citrix workspace. And one of the primary business drivers for us working with Microsoft is creating micro apps that tie Microsoft Dynamics and expose that functionality inside of the workspace so that, for example, if you are a manager and you have to approve someone's expense report, in the past, you'd get some sort of an email notification telling you that, your employee had submitted an expense report. You'd have to stop what you're doing, pop into a different system and go through a review expense and then approve it or send it back for further documentation.
Right.
With the micro app, what we're building with Microsoft there is the ability for, something to appear in your workspace feed telling you, hey, there's an expense report to be approved. And without getting out of the workspace app, we expose the functionality from Dynamics that gives you as the manager the information you need to quickly approve or ask for additional documentation. It's a really powerful concept that allows you to get the full functionality of Dynamics or SAP or any of about 4,500 other applications, common SaaS applications, and be able to leverage that functionality from within the workspace. So you never have to get out of that single pane of glass as you organize and optimize your work. So across all of Microsoft's pillars, we have something of value to add. And so I guess the final thought there would be for your listeners, if you're doing things with Microsoft, there is almost certainly a joint solution from Citrix that takes that Microsoft offering and gives you additional functionality that you might not realize you have access to.
Yeah, that's great. And it's been that way for a long time and will continue to be. I really like your explanation of the micro apps as well. It's going to change hopefully the way people work. Save them a lot of money and time, and should make users experience a lot better.
Absolutely.
Well, is there anything else you want to mention about the Citrix and Microsoft relationship that we haven't touched on?
Yeah, we have a long history of announcing day one support when Microsoft comes out with new technologies. We've been right there with day one support announcements, usually within an hour of Microsoft announcing some new release of server or client or Windows Virtual Desktop or any of that. That is by design. And I think the commitment on behalf of Citrix is that our customers and our partners can expect that to continue. We're very focused on this concept of allowing people to work anywhere on any device, on any network, and be productive to live their best possible lives and contribute value back to their companies. Business continuity is something that I wouldn't mind chatting with you about for a minute, if you're open to that.
Yeah, that's very, very timely, as we're aware of.
Absolutely, right? So, the current situation is only one example. Citrix has long been in the business of encouraging remote work scenarios. And we have some really powerful solutions jointly with Microsoft around that we're seeing tremendous interest on the part of customers. You see small regional interest. If there's a blizzard in the Northeast or an earthquake in California or something that causes, people to be mindful of, business continuity plans, we generally see interest in what Citrix can bring to the market along with Microsoft. And this is no different. So like many companies, we have imposed a travel ban for Citrix employees for all but business critical travel. Many companies are in the same boat now, and we're finding quite a bit of interest in, hey, I need help understanding how to build a business continuity plan. How can I take advantage of the capabilities of the Workday and virtualization services and so forth, to keep the lights on and the deals flowing through while keeping employees safe and, either self-quarantined or away from concentrations where they would have to get on an airplane or be around large concentrations of people. And I think that, this really is a pivot that is going to really change how people look at remote work. I think that in the current situation, companies are offering these solutions to employees to enable them to work from home. And I think that business owners are going to see that in most cases, people are as productive or even in some cases more productive when they have that flexibility, to work as their schedule allows. I don't see that once the current crisis is passed, I don't see that going away, right? The employees that enjoy the increased freedom and flexibility that comes from working at home, I don't think they're going to want to go back to going into the same office every day and sitting within the same four walls. I think this is really a powerful inflection point in how business is conducted globally. From the business side of things, if I were a business owner, I would really, after enabling my workforce, my employees, and seeing that business is still carried on, the job is still getting done, through technology, not for its own sake, but as a business enabler, why am I paying all this money to lease or own physical assets and buildings when people demonstrate they're responsible adults who can work effectively still with other people, but do it remotely? I think this is, people are going to look back at 2020 as the turning point for, remote workers in the world.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I mean, I believe all that myself as well. We have seen some customers come forward and certainly want to deploy a remote work solution, just for the immediate need. But we know from past experience, employees are more happy, they're more engaged, when they have that flexibility, the option to work from home. And let's face it, I mean, we can pick on Wisconsin here a little bit, but where we are, and, there's only so many, specialized skilled employees maybe in your geo, right? So it's a good opportunity to step outside and get, good quality workers elsewhere as well. And remote work enables all that.
The talent pool available to companies increases exponentially if you're willing to consider remote workers. The best available person, in the town or city that your business is based in, there might be someone who, is even more highly skilled and productive and brings something interesting to the mix, but they live in Oregon or they live in Paris or something like that. I think
Right.
Flexible work, work is in a place. It's something you do. And I think that's a really powerful concept.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Brian. We really do appreciate you joining us today. And it's been really insightful looking back at the history of Citrix Microsoft. And as always, we're always very excited to see what's coming as well.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to talk with you today. Citrix very much values the great work that Envision IT has done in the past and it continues to do. You guys are really moving the needle and definitely exhibiting a lot of thought leadership with customers, and we value the partnership with you tremendously.
Yeah, same here. We really appreciate the partnership as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If you have any questions or you have future topics you'd like us to cover, please connect with us via the link in the show notes. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time on Geek Speak with Envision IT.